Hey there, Joey here for School of Motion. In this lesson, we are going to take a look at chromatic aberration in both After Effects and Nuke. Now, what the heck is chromatic aberration and why do I need to know about it? Well, chromatic aberration is one of those things that happens sometimes when you shoot photography. It's a real-world artifact of the imperfectness of the lenses that we use on our cameras. And so adding it to CG renders can make them feel more photographed, which adds to the realism and also looks really cool. I'm gonna show you some ways to achieve the effect without any third-party plugins. Don't forget to sign up for a free student account so you can grab the project files from this lesson, as well as assets from any other lesson on the site. Now, let's hop in and get started.
So what I want to show you guys today is how to achieve an effect called chromatic aberration. And it's kind of a very technical name, but what it means is that sometimes if you're shooting something with a camera, depending on the quality of the lens, the quality of the camera, you may get an effect where the red, blue, and green parts of the image don't line up perfectly. And I'm sure you all have seen this before, and it actually, when you use this effect, it almost makes your video feel like it came from the 1980s, because that was sort of the heyday of really crummy quality video. So chromatic aberration is one of those effects that compositors use to kind of beat up their perfect renders, right? You have software like Maya and Cinema 4D that give you absolutely pixel perfect renders, and that doesn't look real because we're not used to seeing things that are perfect, because nothing in the real world is perfect. So we beat our footage up, and one of the ways we do that is by having the red, green, and blue channels get a little bit out of sync. So I'm going to show you how to do that first in After Effects. So we've just got a pretty simple little scene here, and you guys all saw the preview of this when you started the video, right? So you've got one cube, it kind of turns, there's a missing frame there, don't worry about that, and then it fires out, and there's some cloned cubes, and it's this cool composition. But I set this up specifically for this tutorial because you've got some very thin white lines, right? And then you've got red, green, and blue colors. There's also some yellow, but I wanted to show you a good example of a shot that would benefit from using chromatic aberration. So the first thing that you need to understand, and a lot of people who use After Effects don't really think in these terms, because one of the things I don't like about After Effects is that it hides a lot of the technical stuff from you. It makes it a lot easier, but at the same time, it's kind of, I don't know how to really put this, but it's sort of hiding things from you that if you knew they were there would give you more options with your composite, right? So one of those things is the fact that every image you bring into After Effects has 3 channels, sometimes 4. All right. And if you see this little button right here, right, and maybe you've all noticed it, but I bet most of you have never clicked it. If you click this, you can actually see the red, green, blue, and alpha channel on their own. So let's look at the red channel. All right. You see how my viewer now has this red line around it. Okay. So this is a black and white image, obviously, but what this tells After Effects is how much red is in each part of the image, right? So over here, it's black. So that means there's no red over here. And over here, it's a lot brighter. So that means there's more red right there. Now let's switch to the green channel. The hotkey to do this, by the way, because I'm a huge fan of hotkeys, is you hold Option and you hit 2 for green, 3 for blue, 1 for red, 4 for alpha. All right, so it's Option 1, 2, 3, 4. And if you then hit, so if I hit Option 1 and then I hit Option 1 again, it brings me back to my full RGB view. All right, so we're looking at the green channel, we're looking at the blue channel, we're looking at the alpha channel. The alpha channel is all white, meaning there's no transparency in this scene. Okay, so now, this just sort of demonstrates to you that your image has 3 color channels. Now, they're all combined into this one layer, so how do we separate them out? All right, so the first thing I want to do is just color correct this a little bit, because it's a little bit dark. When you render things right out of Cinema 4D, it's very rare that you're going to just leave them the way they are. You're almost always going to touch them up a little bit. And I'm not going to go too crazy here. I just want to show you some of the weaknesses of After Effects in the process of doing this. So I've color corrected it a little bit. I'm going to duplicate this layer. and I'm going to set it to add mode. And I'm just going to throw a fast blur on there really quickly, just to get a little bit of a glow. I'm going to zoom out, and I want to mask my glow layer just so it's kind of catching the tops of some of these. I don't really want the whole scene to have this glow on it. All right, and you can see I'm getting this little washed out area here. So on my glow layer, I'm gonna crush the blacks a little bit so that goes away. All right, so I just got like a little, nice kind of glow now on this, right? And then maybe I want to add an adjustment layer so I can color correct this a little bit more. So I'm going to add a color balance effect. I'm doing this really quickly because, I don't want to spend too much time on this for this part of the tutorial. But I definitely think I want to do a full, really nice composite in After Effects for a tutorial one day, because there's a lot of tricks to it that I've learned over the years to get your renders to look really good. So anyway, we're going to stop here. We're going to pretend that this is what we want, okay? So now I need to pre-compose all of this. All right, and this is where After Effects starts to make this a little harder than it should be. I have, sort of a composite chain here. I've got my base render with some color correction on it. Then I've got a copy of that I'm blurring and adding over the original to create some glows. I've got an adjustment layer that's working on, my render and my glow, and it's just kind of changing the colors up a little bit, right? And I'm not too happy with how that's looking right now, but I'm going to leave it. So next, what I want to do is take the result of all of this, and I want to break it up into the red, green, and blue channels. And unfortunately, there's no way to easily do that with these three layers still separated out the way they are. So I'm going to have to pre-compose them. So I'm going to select all three of them. I'm going to hit Shift-Command-C to bring up my pre-comp dialog. And I'm just going to call this image. Okay? All right, so now that this is all pre-comped, we can now separate it into the channels. So let me rename this layer red. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab an effect. And there's a group of effects called channel effects. And these are all things that work on individual channels or sometimes multiple channels. And to be honest, I have not seen very many After Effects artists use these. When I hire freelancers for toil, most of them are sort of self-taught. And when you self-teach yourself, man, that's kind of like, that was really bad grammar right there. When you teach yourself After Effects, most of the time you're sort of figuring out the quickest, easiest way to do things, and using these effects is usually not the quickest, easiest way, but they're very powerful. So what I'm going to use is the Shift Channels effect. Now, what does Shift Channels effect do? All right, well, if you look up here in the effect controls, it basically lets me switch which channels are going to be used for the red, green, blue, and alpha channels. So this layer here has a red channel, right? And just to show you one more time, this is the red channel, the blue channel, the green channel, and the blue channel, okay? So what I want is to isolate the red channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell, so the red channels is actually using the existing red channel. I'm going to tell it to take the green channel from the red channel and the blue channel from the red channel. Okay, so now I've got a black and white image, and if I switch to the red channel now, you'll see that nothing changes because this is the red channel. All right, so now let's duplicate that. And let's call this the green channel. And we're just going to do the same thing. We're going to switch all of these to green. So now this layer is only showing me the green channel. All right. Now we've got the blue channel, so we'll do the same thing. Great. All right, so now these are separated out. Now, the obvious problem is that this is black and white now. This is not what we wanted. So when you use Shift Channels and you switch all three channels to be the same, this is what the result is. It gives you a black and white image. So now what I need to do is turn this black and white image into an image that reflects the amount of red in each pixel. So the easiest way I found to do that is to add another effect. It's in the color correction group, and it's called Tint, and it's really simple. And what Tint does is it lets you map the black, all of the black in your layer to one color, and then map all of the white to another color. So all of the black should stay black, but all of the white is telling After Effects how much red should be in the image. So that white should actually be 100% red. All right, now a quick note. If you'll notice, I'm in 32-bit mode here. And that's because I rendered out open EXRs from Cinema 4D with 32 bits of color information. And so it's better when you have 32-bit renders to work in 32-bit mode in After Effects. Your color corrections will be more accurate. You'll have more latitude to bring up dark areas and bring down bright areas. And when you switch to 32-bit mode, these RGB values no longer go from 0 to 255. They go from 0 to 1. And so that confuses some people because a lot of people just leave After Effects at the default 8-bit, 8 bits per channel. And if you're working in 32-bit, just know that the RGBs will look a little bit different, okay? So if I want 100% red, then all I need to do is set green to 0 and blue to 0. All right, and you can see this is what it did. It made my red channel actually red. All right, so now I'm gonna copy the tint effect, turn my green channel back on and paste it. And instead of 100% red, we just do 100% green, just like that. All right, and then you can probably guess what the next step is. Blue. Cool. All right, so we've got our red, green, and blue channels. And then the last step is you just set all of them to screen mode. And there you go. So now we have our, and if I jump in here, right, into my pre-comp, you'll see that it matches up pixel perfect now. Here's the original pre-comp with the render in it, and here's the comp where we've separated out the channels and they look identical. We've separated out red, green, and blue, we've put them back together, and now we have the control to move these around. I can take the green layer now and nudge it, and you can see that it's actually split and I can move it independently. So, in reality, chromatic aberration generally works this way. Things that are in the center of the frame are aligned a little bit better than things on the edges. And so if I just sort of move these layers like this, right, this is generally not how chromatic aberration looks. Although, we're trying to make something look neat here, right? This is one of those techniques that just sort of adds kind of a feel and a look to things. So I generally don't worry too much about how accurate an effect like that is. But if you wanted to try and reproduce sort of like chromatic aberration from a camera, then you could use an effect like maybe optics compensation, right? And if I solo the blue layer to show you optics compensation, basically simulates lens distortion, right? You can see how this is sort of turning it into almost a fisheye lens or something. So what you could do is reverse the lens distortion and then it distorts it the other way. So you can see that the middle of the image does not move very much, but the outside moves a whole bunch. So if I have an effect like that on the blue channel, and then I maybe do the same thing on the red channel, but I change the values a little bit, right? You can see that in the middle here, if I zoom in the middle, everything's lined up pretty well. But then on the edges, we start to get some out of syncness here with the channels. Cool. So that's one way to do it, and of course you can always just sort of nudge your layers around a little bit, right? I could just make the blue, up and to the left and then make the green down and to the right. And you'll sort of get this out of sync, cool looking effect. And it really works well if you have dark areas with white things in them, like this white grid here, because white is 100% red, blue, and green. And so you're gonna really see the effect there. If you have things that are blue, right, then they're not going to have as much green and red in them, so you may not see the chromatic aberration as much there. But you can see this image is kind of a good test image for this effect. All right. So this is how you do it in After Effects. Now, why, what's the issue with this, right? This works perfectly well. There's no problems. The issue, right? And I'll show you in a minute how to do this in Nuke, and hopefully you'll see why Nuke might be a better option for this effect. The problem with After Effects is that I can see I have a blue, green, and red layer, but I cannot see, easily what is happening with the blue, green, and red layer. If I click on one of these layers, I can then see, okay, there's a shift channels effect, there's a tint effect tinting it blue, and then if I click on the green, I can see that it's tinting it green. But I kind of have to click through these things to see actually what's going on. I also, just at a glance, have no idea which channels I moved, right? Because I would have to open up the position and keep this open to actually remember which ones were moved. If I had an optics compensation effect on here like what I showed you, I wouldn't actually know what that effect was doing unless I clicked the layer that effect was on. The other big thing is that, let's say I'm looking at this and now I decide I want to color correct it a little differently. Well, I can come back into this pre-comp here and I can color correct it and then come back here and look at the result. Of course, there's other ways to work on this comp but see this comp. I could turn the lock on the viewer, come back here and then, change the adjustment layer up and try to get a little bit different of an effect, but it's kind of clunky. I have to go back and forth, right? And, let's say I wanted to adjust the mask on this glow. Well, I can't do that if I have the lock on the viewer. I need to turn that off. Now I need to come back in here and adjust the mask and then come back in here and see the results. So this is where After Effects starts to get clunky. And for those of you that use After Effects a lot, I know, and I know that you know, that there are ways around that clunkiness and there are ways to composite in After Effects and get the same result you get in Nuke. I'm just telling you, once you get the hang of Nuke, Nuke is just so much more elegant at doing things like this, right? I would never animate in Nuke. After Effects is much better for that, but when you're compositing, and that's what this is, we're taking 3D renders and we're trying to make them look awesome, Nuke is just better at that. All right, so that's how you do chromatic aberration in After Effects. I'm now going to show you how to do it in Nuke. So let's switch over to Nuke. Now, I know that Nuke is not as widely used, and so the interface may look strange to you, and it's a node-based compositing application, which works a lot differently than a layer-based compositing application. So I'm going to try and explain each step to you as though you've never used Nuke before. So I apologize if you have used Nuke. This is going to be a lot of review. So this is the only thing I have in this Nuke script right now. Okay, first of all, Nuke projects are called scripts. That's the terminology that's used. This is a Nuke script. You have an After Effects project and you have a Nuke script. So this right here, this is called a read node, all right? And a read node literally just reads in files. And if I double click this node, I see some options over here, right? So it's telling me which file. So these are my render files, ca_scene.exr. And I didn't render this 16:9. I did it a little bit wider than 16:9. So the format is 960 by 400. Cool. All right. So let's say we want to color correct this a little bit. Okay. So in Nuke, every effect, every operation you do, even things like moving an image or scaling an image, everything you do takes a node, okay? So that's why it's called a node-based application. So if I want to just, brighten this image a little bit, right? What I would do is I would select this node, and over here you've got a whole bunch of little menus, and all of these things that I'm showing you, these are all nodes you can select. And Nuke actually has a really cool way of adding nodes, where you just hit tab and this little search box comes up and you can start typing in the name of the node you want and it will pop up, and then you hit enter and here it is. So a grade node in Nuke is it's basically like a levels effect in After Effects, okay? One other thing to notice is that I have this node down here called the viewer. If I disconnect this, I don't see anything. What I'm looking at here, this viewer area, this works the same way After Effects viewer works, except I can actually see a node icon for that viewer, and I can connect that viewer to different things. And there's hotkeys to do that. So I can look at my original footage, or I can look at the footage after it's gone through the grade node. So let's grade this a little bit. I'm going to adjust the gain, and you'll find also the color correction tools in Nuke, they're a lot more responsive. I mean, look how quickly I can sort of mess with these things, and they're a lot more precise too. Gain works on a much narrower range of values. It works on the brightest values. And then you can also adjust the white point and the black point the same as you would in After Effects. And then what I really like about Nuke is they make it really easy to add color to each of these settings here. So if I wanted, let's say, the black areas of this image to have a little color to them, that would be this multiply setting here. So, you know, I can raise this up and down a little bit, right? But I can also click on this color wheel, right? And I can just sort of move it around until I find a color. So if I wanted it to feel kind of really synthetic, I could maybe have it be somewhere in this greenish blue area, right? Maybe that's too much, but and then I could do a different color, maybe a complementary color, right, on the highlights, right? So if this was the color I was using, it would be somewhere over here, somewhere in this reddish orange area. Cool. And then I can just, you know, color correct things up and down and try to find the look that I want, okay? All right, and so this is starting to feel a little bit washed out, so I'm going to leave this where it was. Come back here and just add a little bit of a greenish blue color to the gain. Okay, so let's pretend that's what we want. All right, so now I can very quickly see the original and the result, okay? Cool. Now, okay, so what was the next thing we did in After Effects? We added a little bit of a glow to this. So, you know, I've said before that the glow effect that's built into After Effects is terrible. The glow effect that's built into Nuke is actually pretty great. So if I run, right, and you can see why, you know, you use these nodes. It makes like a little flow chart. You have your image, it gets graded, and then it goes through a glow node, okay? Now the glow node has a bunch of settings, and I can up the tolerance so that it's not actually making everything glow, only the brightest parts. I can adjust the brightness of the glow. I can also adjust the saturation of the glow, which is cool because this looks a little too colorful, and then I can bring it all the way down, you know, and just leave a little bit of that color. It also gives me the option for the effect only, so I only see the glow. And this is where Nuke really shows its power, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have, and I want to step through this because I want to make sure everyone understands what's happening here. I have my image. It's going into a grade node, which color corrects a little bit. It's then going into a glow node, okay? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a node called merge, all right? And this is one of the things that people who are new to Nuke and who use After Effects, initially you'll find it silly. In After Effects, if you have two layers and you put them both in your timeline and you put one layer on top of the other one, the one that's on top is composited on top of the one that's underneath it. In Nuke, nothing happens automatically. So if I have this image, right, this color corrected image, and then I have this glow layer, and I want this glow layer on top of this image, I have to tell it to do that with a node. So the merge node's how you do that. So the way the merge node works is you have two inputs, you have A and you have B, and you always merge A over B. So I want to merge this glow over this grade. All right, and so now if I look through this, you'll see that now my glow is composited on top of my image. And I can step through my comp and see every step that's happening. So here's the original shot, here's the graded one, here's the glow, and then here's the glow merged on top of the grade. Now, why did I do it this way? Why didn't I just have the glow node right here? Well, the reason I did it this way is because now I have that glow separated out. And so what I could do is I could do different things to that glow. I could apply more effects to it, or I could add a roto node, right? and I could come in here and change some settings on the roto node, and I'm not going to get too deep into it, but basically a roto node is like a mask in After Effects, right? So I can, I can change some settings on it, and basically what I want to do is get rid of the glow on certain areas, right? I only want that glow to show up on a specific part of the image. And you can see that the mask tool in Nuke also is really powerful. Now you can do this now. You actually can feather your mask on a per vertex basis. That's what this is called. Nuke has always been able to do that, and I hope you're noticing how responsive this is too. There is no lag. Nuke is designed to work very quickly. In After Effects, when your comps get too complicated, even moving a mask point like this, it starts to slow down. And in Nuke, that doesn't happen. So now let's look at what's happening, right? We've got our original footage. Let me turn this roto node off. It gets graded, okay? Then this graded version goes into a glow node, goes into the roto node, right? And here's the difference. Glow node, the roto node knocks some of this away, and then that gets merged over, okay? So if I turn the roto node on and off, and this is another great thing about Nuke, I can select a node and tap the D key. You see how it X's it out? Okay, so now I can really quickly see with, without, right? That fast, okay? So this is with, and I've masked out some of this stuff here, so it's not glowing down here, it's only kind of glowing in this area, which is what I wanted. All right, now let's talk about chromatic aberration, okay? So in Nuke does not hide the channels from you as much as After Effects, and if you want proof, just look, I double click this merge node, and look, I've got a list of all the channels right here, red, green, blue, alpha. And, and so in Nuke, you're always having to think about, do I have the channels set up correctly? There's a lot more manual work involved in Nuke to add an alpha channel to a red, green, and blue channel, and then have that alpha channel applied correctly. And a lot of times in Nuke, you're doing operations to individual channels. So if we look at this merge node, right, this is the result of our composite so far, and I hold my mouse over the viewer and I hit R, it shows me the red channel. G is the green channel, B is the blue channel. Okay, so this part works kind of the same as After Effects. So the first thing I want to do is split those channels up. So if you want to split channels out from part of your composite, you use a node called the shuffle node. Okay, so here's my shuffled node, and I'm going to connect this to my merge node, and I'm going to double click this, and I'm just going to call this shuffle_R so I can keep track. And in the shuffle node settings, you'll see you've got this interesting little grid here. And basically what this is saying is these are the channels that are coming in, right? In from one, RGBA. And using these checkboxes, I can decide which channels to keep and which channels to get rid of. So I want the red channel. I don't want green or blue or alpha. I actually want all of these to be red. Okay, so I'm just going to say all of these are red. And now if I look through this, again, I've got a black and white image, right? So this is the red channel. Now I can copy and paste this node and connect this to the merge node. So what's cool in Nuke is that you can have one node connected to a bunch of different nodes. So in After Effects, we would have had to take all of this and pre-compose it and basically hide it from ourselves. Then we could split it out into different channels. In Nuke, this all doesn't change at all. And now you literally get this visual representation of what's happening to your image, okay? So I'm going to switch this node to green, okay? I'm going to paste it again. Let's rename this shuffle_B. And then we're going to switch all of the channels to blue, okay? So we've got red, green, and blue. Okay, and now I want to recombine them. Okay, so basically in Nuke, if you put a red channel, if you put a black and white image in the red channel, a black and white image in the green channel, and a black and white image in the blue channel, it's going to automatically turn them red, green, and blue. You don't have to do the trick that we did in After Effects of tinting this black and white image and then screening it back over itself. So it's nice like that. Nuke just kind of saves you a little bit of work because it's designed to work with these channels. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use another node called a shuffle copy. And I'm going to first start with the red and the green. Okay. And, you know, you can see that, you know, I'm kind of anal retentive and I like to have all of my nodes kind of lined up, and I like to try and keep the lines straight. It makes it a lot easier for me to visualize what's going on. So sometimes if I'm moving a node around, I'll hold command. And when you hold command, you see these dots appear. And you can add little elbow joints to your nodes. So if you're really kind of a geek and you like organizing things, Nuke is for you, because you can create these beautiful little trees. And you know, once you've used Nuke a little bit, you'll look at this and you'll be able to see exactly what's happening. This is the biggest advantage of Nuke over After Effects, is you can see every single thing that's happening in your comp all at the same time, right? So it's very clear to me that I have footage, it's being affected, and then I'm splitting the result of that in two directions. One direction goes this way, and I can say, oh, that's going into a glow node. And then that glow node is being merged over the original result. And then that result's being split into three things, and you can go in, and since I've labeled these, it's clear, oh, I'm making a red channel, a green channel, and a blue channel. So there's no jumping back and forth between pre-comps. So in this shuffle copy node, what I want to do is keep the red channel, right, from R, because if you look closely, you'll see my shuffle copy has two inputs. One is labeled 1, one is labeled 2. And so what I'm telling Nuke is from input 1, which is the red channel, keep the red channel. From input 2, which is the green channel, keep the green channel. And we don't care about the blue channel yet, okay? So it doesn't matter what's checked there. In fact, I could turn that off. All right, so we're keeping the red channel from 1, the green channel from 2. And now I need another shuffle copy, okay? And I'm going to connect this up to the blue channel. All right, so now input 1, we want to keep the blue channel. And input 2, we want to keep the red and the green, okay? All right, so now if I look through this shuffle copy node, this final one, right, you'll see that I've got my image. If I look through this merge node way up here, this is where we started, okay? And then we did a bunch of little operations here to break the image up into channels and then put them back together. And at the end of that, we're left with the exact same image. Now, here's what's great, is that I now have these little tree trunks here with no nodes on them for red, green, and blue. And I could very easily add a node, let's say a transform node, okay? So this is one of the things when I started using Nuke that I thought was silly. If you want to move an image or scale it or rotate it or do anything, you actually have to add a node to do that called transform. And it seemed like a lot of extra work. You know, in After Effects, you would just click the layer and move it. So why do you have to use a node in Nuke? Well, if you use a node, there's a lot of cool things you can do. And I'll show you a couple of those in a minute. But let's just add this transform node, double click it, and over here you can see all your settings for the transform node. And I can click and drag this around just like this, okay? That works just the same as After Effects. And but I'm just gonna nudge this a few pixels on X, all right? A few pixels on Y. And you can see we're getting that same chromatic aberration effect that we had in After Effects. So now I can copy this. So I've copied and pasted the transform node, and I can, you know, adjust this one a little bit differently, right? So, you know, the red channel I've moved in one direction, the green channel I've moved in a slightly different direction. Maybe the blue channel, we can add another transform node, and we could just scale it a little bit. Right, and one of the things I really like about Nuke is that you can just use the arrow keys really quickly to get very precise with what you're doing. If I move the cursor to the left, then I'm working on the you know, on the tenths digit here, and then if I hit right arrow, right? And now the cursor's moved a little bit, and now I'm working on the hundredths digits. So you can get really precise, and I can even hit right again, and now I'm working in thousandths. So you can very quickly dial in exactly the value you want for this. Cool. All right, so now we've got chromatic aberration, and we're good to go, right? And look at this. This is so much more clear, at least to me, and I hope it is to you too. It's very clear what's going on here, right? You've got, you've got your merge node, and it's being split into 3 channels, and you literally get this visual representation of what's happening, and then they get put back together. And then once they've been put back together, then you can do even more stuff. So you could add a lens distortion node, okay? And this is sort of like optics compensation in After Effects. And you can, get some really nice lens distortion out of this. Cool. And then maybe we want to add some film grain to it. So we would add a grain node. And we could, there's some presets here that Nuke comes with. You can also really dial in the intensity of the red, green, and blue channels. And there you go. And so now here's your composite, okay? And if you look at it, and let me just make this composite full screen for a minute. If you look at this, you can see every single step of your composite in one view. And once you've used Nuke a little bit and you sort of start to recognize, there's kind of a color scheme that Nuke uses for these nodes, and you'll start to recognize, okay, a blue node is a merge node, a green node is a roto node, and this color is for shuffle nodes or shuffle copy nodes. And so very quickly, even if I didn't know what the result of this was, I would be able to tell you, okay, let's see, you've got a render, and then there's a glow applied to it. That glow is masked out a little bit. We're clearly splitting the image into red, green, and blue channels here. There's transform nodes, so I know that you've moved them. And then you've put them back together. There's lens distortion and grain, and you can see all of that right here. You don't have to click on layers and know what effects are on them or go into pre-comps or any of that. And there you go. And you also saw how responsive this is too. Like if I say, okay, you know what? I want to step through every step of this composite that I've done. You can do that. And in After Effects, it would be very tedious to do that. Here's my render, graded. Here's the glow that we set up and then masked out and then merged back on top of the image. Here's the red, green, and blue channels. And we've transformed each of those, right? And then put them back together to get chromatic aberration, added lens distortion, and grain. And it's that quick. And you can see how quickly this renders too, right? I'm stepping through this and it's rendering every frame, and it is literally going that fast. You can almost scrub through it, okay? So for stuff like this, use Nuke. It's just a lot better. The last thing I want to mention about this, which is one of the things that I'm starting to do more and more of in Nuke, and I think it's really awesome and really powerful. So let me hop back into After Effects for 1 second. Let's say that I really love this chromatic aberration effect. I think it's the greatest thing I've ever done, and I want to save it as a preset. So how would I do that in After Effects? Well, you really can't. What you could do is save this project as a setup, and basically you'd have to load that project into whatever new project you're doing, go into one of these pre-comps, and inside of the pre-comp, replace that with whatever image you want, and then come back out to this comp, and this is where the chromatic aberration happens, okay? But there's no way to put a render in and apply chromatic aberration effect with what's built in to After Effects. Of course, there's third-party effects and scripts, and you can go buy things. But to be honest, if you're buying an effect to create chromatic aberration for yourself, then you're throwing your money away, because I just showed you how to do it for free with what's built into After Effects, and it's not hard at all, so you really should not pay someone to do this for you. Now, let's look at Nuke on the other hand. With Nuke, I'm going to change one little thing here, okay? So I've got this merge node, and it's being split into 3 different pieces here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add an elbow joint to one of these, and I'm going to connect these other 2 shuffles to the elbow joint, okay? And the reason I'm doing this, okay, so what I have now is basically this section here is a self-contained set of nodes, right? that actually create chromatic aberration for me. All of this stuff that happens before, this is just color correction and some glow. And then at the end, this is lens distortion and some film grain. But this is chromatic aberration. And what's amazing about Nuke is that I could right click this whole setup, right? And I can go to, I can go into the menu here and I can actually group these nodes, right? And say collapse to group, okay? And actually I must have not had them all selected. So let me select them one more time. Okay, I'm gonna try going up to edit, node, group, collapse to group. Here we go, okay. So now what just happened, right? All of those nodes that created chromatic aberration are now inside of one node. Cool. And if I click on this group here, I can rename it. I could call this chromatic aberration. I'm not sure I spelled that right either. Someone spell check me. And then I can click on this S and actually bring up a little node tree for just that group, okay? And let's look at this. You've got input 1. Input 1 is basically whatever is being fed into this group comes in here, gets split up into red, green, blue, gets transformed a little bit, and then that gets put back together and sent to this output node, right? And now if we switch back to our main node graph, you can see whatever comes into this group comes out split up with chromatic aberration. So I can actually select this node now, and I could copy and paste it and put anything I want into it. If I make like this little checkerboard pattern and I run this into the node and look through the node, I've got chromatic aberration now. And I have basically built myself an effect in like 2 minutes. And what you can then do is you can select this node, and keep in mind this node is just a group of nodes. You can select it, edit, node, group, and you can actually turn this into what's called a gizmo. A gizmo is basically the Nuke version of an effect, or maybe it's more like the Nuke version of a script. Nuke users can make groups of nodes, and you can get really, really complicated with it, and then group them together. And you can even go as far as creating some controls on them using some Nuke expressions. But you can actually turn these into something that you can share. You can upload these. You can send them to other people to use, and you've got this great effect in one little node that in After Effects would be impossible to turn into a one-click kind of effect, right? You have to break it up into pre-comps and do a lot of work. So that is one of the coolest things about Nuke. You can have really complex kind of setups that then you can reuse really easily. And at the same time, look at this comp now. Let's take a look at this comp. Now that I've grouped my chromatic aberration into one node, look at how simple this is, right? My After Effects comp, I had 2 pre-comps and I had 3 copies of a comp, and I had effects on each one, and some of them were moved and some of them weren't. This is just so crystal clear, right? And there's like less than 10 nodes here. It's just like so simple. And I'm getting the exact same effect I got in After Effects, and it's rendering significantly faster. I hope I didn't go through this too quickly, because I know Nuke is brand new to a lot of you. This was not a beginner's Nuke tutorial. This was sort of in the middle somewhere. But hopefully, even if you've never used Nuke and you didn't fully understand every step, you were able to follow enough to see the power of Nuke and why Nuke is designed the way it's designed, and why that's useful for compositing. So I hope this was interesting to you guys, because I think that learning Nuke is one of the best ways to expand your capabilities and expand your employability and your marketability, and add a whole new set of tools, to your arsenal, and be able to, get more clients, make some more money, do more work, and pay the bills, provide for your family, buy a house, buy a car, do whatever you got to do. Once again, Joey from School Motion, thank you guys, and I'll see you later.
Thank you for watching. I hope you learned something new about compositing your CG renders in After Effects and Nuke. They're both very powerful programs, and this lesson should have also given you a good idea of what the differences are between the two programs for compositing. If you have any questions or thoughts, let us know. And we'd love to hear from you if you use this technique on a project. So give us a shout on Twitter @SchoolofMotion and show us your work. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time.